sitting here with Laura Freeman. You may remember the name. Laura Freeman, Laura's Lean Beef. That was back in the old days when we thought that lean was the best way to have beef. And as Laura brought up earlier today, times have changed, perceptions have changed. We recorded earlier a video on what Laura's doing now. It's CBD. There's a lot of interest in CBD for a whole bunch of reasons. In the YouTube live video, we didn't cover an issue that's very interesting to Laura, and that has to do with cognition. She talked a little bit about why that was an issue early on, but you want to just clarify a little bit more for us what specifically drives the issue about cognition, your interest?
For me, again, I at one point was a very good horseback rider, and I had a big horseback smash up where I hit my cerebellum, so right by my spinal column. And besides escaping being quadriplegic, I did have a traumatic brain injury. And so obviously that puts, well, it's obvious, it should be obvious. It puts me more at risk for cognitive decline. And let's face it, I'm a smarty pants. And so cognitive decline is my worst fear, period. And so after this, I had resources to pursue the whole extended subject matter. From going to Dawn Yoga up in Cambridge to shamans in South America to Esalen to learn to train my brain waves. And I really got into the thing. And I was pretty out there at some points, but there were some things that did seem to work. And it looked to me like CBD probably did. And so I'm not really sure why it's neuroprotected. I want to ask you that. But once I saw the NIH patent, I mean, I started growing it and I started drinking it.
I'm actually taking it now too after doing research in that area. Again, I don't think anybody knows why it's neuroprotective like it is. There's a lot of evidence around. It's an antioxidant, a neurologic antioxidant. It impacts the neurotransmitters. Both of those are very, very well documented. Now, are either one of those driving it? Is it a mixture of the two? It's not very clear.
Well, let's simplify. I mean, the first thing is it passes the blood-brain barrier.
Yes.
Okay,
no
so
question.
Even describe that and what does and what doesn't, and then take it from there, because I can't really even visualize it.
So a lot of things don't pass the blood-brain barrier, and that whole point helps me. I'm focusing on another type of supplement right now that actually has an impact on your eyes. The reason I'm bringing that up is the eyes are also behind the blood-brain barrier. So when people are looking at supplements that may help the retina in the eye, they're really thinking, this is what the universal thing is. And if you talk to any of our patients, and we agree with the same thing,
so yes, it's the optic nerve. Okay.
It's the optic nerve. Yeah. It's the optic nerve,
okay.
And therefore it's behind that blood-brain barrier. Most of us feel the same way. Yes, we talk about heart attack and stroke prevention, but what really scares us is losing our brains, losing our ability to think, our ability to function. What we want to do is what we call rectangularizing our lifespan. Have you heard that term?
No, but I assume it's that you're good and then you just collapse.
Correct. Yeah. You make it to 90 and then you just cut off immediately. Yeah. You die in a wreck, you die from a quick-acting cancer or something else. But you don't want to just continue to suffer decline.
And most of our patients come in wanting wanting good quality of life through their lifespan. Because I think the thinking has changed. It used to be, can I live longer when the lifespan was shorter? But now it's how am I going to live?
Yeah.
Am I going to have good quality? And really, foremost is cognitive decline.
Sure, and I mean, look about genetics. I most likely will live to well in my 90s.
Right.
In fact, my
We will
financial
as well.
planner's got it down at 96.
Ours does as well.
Yeah.
And that's our plan. That's my expectation.
Yeah.
People talk about it, but they think that's kind of weird. I mean, I'll see 50 and 60 and 70-year-olds that have lost 30 or 40 or 95 pounds, like the fellow that I saw last week. And my first response is, you've probably saved yourself a couple of decades. And people still don't get it, that they're going to live till their 90s, assuming you do the proper stuff for your health. Now, the 80s is the decade that you start running risk for cognitive decline. And maybe we could get back to your question just a minute. When you look at that patent, as we mentioned, one of the three guys that was behind that patent, all NIH employees, one of them was a past Nobel Prize winner.
Yeah.
And what they were documenting, heck, I know from conversations, you know this part as well as I do. I'll give you my view and you can maybe correct me some. But what they looked at was impact on nerves. And it wasn't just slow decline of nerve. It wasn't just traumatic. It wasn't just inflammatory damage to nerves. It was any and all three of those types of damage to those nerves. And what they found was that combinations of CBD oil actually put those nerves almost in a freeze position or something to where it stopped that damage to those nerves. Now, what I never found was exactly what's doing it. Is it the anti-inflammatory impact? Is it the a neurotransmitter impact? Is it a combination, or is it something else entirely that's coming in from left field? Well, I know you've studied this because I know a little bit about your background, and I know that was material to you in making decision and going into this. Are there pieces of this that you know about that, or that you're thinking of that I'm not mentioning?
Not really. I mean, I kind of think that CBD acts with two pathways in your brain. One is inflammatory, and one is somehow neurological. But beyond that, I don't know. And that's why I was so glad you were here today.
Well, I don't think you're the only person that doesn't know. I just don't think it's known yet. I mean, I think you continue to look through there, and I think that's one of the unanswered questions. But there's no question about whether or not it has that impact. It clearly does.
Okay. Well, let's keep drinking CBD then.
So, any thoughts?
About cognitive, well, the CBD effect, again, I know as much as you do about the research. But we are working on this in our own business. We've used the Bredesen approach. He wrote the book, The End of Alzheimer's. We have done a full-blown Bredesen assessment in the past, and now really we're almost there with what we do with inflammation. We just have to add the MRI back in. There's a big focus in his project on mold and metals as well. But one of the things that I do as a health coach in our business is the MOCA, which is Montreal Cognitive Assessment, which is better than the mini mental, which has been used for a long time. It has better reliability, better validity. It's been tested. And it's 30 questions. You have to be an assessor, but that's, something that you can learn to do if you want to be an assessor. It's made the news, as we mentioned earlier, when our president had the MOCA. But it also...
Sorry about the fly.
No, I'm swatting.
Swat, we got fly.
But it gives you a numerical range, or it gives you a number, and you fall into a range of mild, moderate, or severe decline. So if it's severe, of course, that points you towards a full-blown Alzheimer's assessment. If it's mild, then you definitely want to start engaging in activities. And we've discussed this previously. Word searches probably won't be enough. There are some online things like Lumosity and Brain HQ, but I'm a real big proponent of the brain-body approach, which is more centered on dual tasking, doing something motorically as well as cognitively.
Motorically, can you explain that? Define that?
Well, locomotor movements.
Okay.
Upper or lower body while you're doing a cognitive task. So you're really challenging yourself. You're doing and most of us will say, like, I'm multitasking. You know, that's a slogan. But you are making a you're making that part of your daily activity, some kind of dual tasking. So it might just not be like I'm juggling the phone while I'm working on the computer, you know, but it's a motor task. And
large muscle groups, like?
Yeah, and a cognitive
Can you
task.
describe the program you were just in?
Well, I participated in a program.
Drumming for Parkinson's?
Well, it's Drums Alive, and it's out of Germany. And I was just in Hawaii where I learned it from the person that began it, Carrie Elkins. And you're drumming on a therapy ball, but then you're doing large motor movements with your lower body. And we are interested in doing some research on that with people with Parkinson's. And another big part of that is the cognitive component.
A couple of plugs and clarifications. One is you say you can learn to do the MOCA test. There's not a lot. How many other people do you know that are trained and certified to do the MOCA test?
Yeah, I don't know anybody, quite frankly. I mean, I'm sure in clinical settings they do. You know, I would think Sanders Brown, at UK would have MOCA assessors. Yeah.
And just to plug and describe for our practice and what we do, we actually do have a cognitive decline program. We were deeper into it for a couple of years. We had to back off as I did some of my other work with the Medicare Advantage population. But Janice got training and is the only person that I know that can actually is certified to administer a MOCA cognition test. It looks at short-term memory, executive function, orientation, clock drawing, attention, language, abstraction, animal naming, a bunch of different things. I didn't fail it, but I didn't do it perfectly.
You weren't as good as Trump.
I wasn't as good as the president. And you guys might not want to say it, but I tend to be more conservative and Republican than some of my. I'm a libertarian. Anyhow, bottom line, I suspect his score on that too. Anyway, we're getting back into doing a lot more of the cognitive decline work. One of the reasons that we got out of it was that, as we mentioned, Bredesen goes so deep into a lot of things like mold and fungus, allergy components, and those are real, but they are incredibly time-consuming in terms of working with patients. And we need other folks that can do that part with us and for us. And actually, this past couple of weeks, I hooked up with an old friend who does a lot of this. So we'll be getting back into that.
But it seems like worrying about mold when people weigh 300 pounds doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, first thing to do is not weigh 300 pounds.
Thank you very much. That is my focus. The major component of what I do is to work with people on vascular inflammation. And bottom line, we've talked about exercise and its impact on cognitive decline. We've talked about caffeine, and we'll talk about other things as well. Hands down, vascular inflammation is a big, big deal for this area. And one of the questions we have is, well, what's the mechanism for exercise? If you look at all of these things, the strongest association for prevention is exercise. And I suspect that has to do, again, with vascular inflammation.
And specifically, high-intensity interval training.
Yeah, right.
Which the School of Thought has changed on that, where the American College of Sports Medicine, you only need to get a 30-second interval. You know, if you go into the YMCA or some gym, you get on that program machine like a treadmill. You're going to have a 4-minute warm-up. Then you're going to, get to a higher state. But then your interval is going to be 4 minutes. So I always tell our patients to self-program. Do maybe 6 or 8 bouts of 30-second high intensity. which you can do by increasing the speed or the incline.
Okay, explain to me one more time. Why? Because what I do is I go into the gym and I take my heart rate up to 160 for 10 minutes. That's my program.
Doing what?
Riding bike.
Okay.
And then I hike out here every day. But I never miss 3 times at the gym, 160. And so I followed this that you can do shorter bursts of high interval, but I just haven't switched. I mean, I've been doing it so long.
For a lot of people who, are not exercise enthusiasts, that that longer interval prohibits them from initiating. And of course, anything you do for well-being, for lifestyle, motivation is key, and you have to take the first step towards it. And so those shorter intervals, like we have people that basically are in a hotel all week, and they get in so late they can't get in on the hotel treadmill. And this is the nice thing about these 30 seconds. You can do it by yourself in your hotel room with your body as the resistance, your own weight, a chair, and the wall. And so that is one benefit of the 30-second. But they have done research that shows it has been just as beneficial as the longer intervals.
No, that's the key thing. Yeah.
Well, that's actually an area where I have passion. There's a Mayo Clinic,
sure,
the one in Minnesota. There is a physician there who's done some very interesting work in this area. You've heard of mitochondria. They're the powerhouse of the cell. And there's up until the information theory, the mitochondrial theory was the major theory behind aging. I won't get into those, but there's a lot of people that know what I'm talking about.
We have our telomeres that shorten and all that stuff.
There's telomeres. There's a bunch of there's what we burn in terms of fuel. There's about 8 different components. I just did a 10-part series on lifespan. It's the new book by David Sinclair.
Okay, see, I don't know any of this, but
lifespan, you'll love it. And we're publishing one of my series each time.
Okay.
Where was I?
We were talking about the intervals in mitochondria.
So the
mitochondria.
So here's what they did. They took a group of 20-somethings, 30-somethings, a group of 50-somethings, 40 and 50-somethings, and a group of 70 and 80-something-year-old folks. They took them out, they randomized them to 3 different types of exercise. Long, slow distance, the aerobics that you've mentioned a couple of times. Resistance training, and high-intensity intervals. What they found, and after they did this, they did it's called a crossover design. So you take some of the 80-year-olds and you have them do the HIIT first, and then you have them do the other stuff later after you.
So you feel like it was well designed.
Very well designed. And here's what they found: the HIIT, the high intensity intervals, was the absolute best at stimulating more mitochondria growing in the muscles. And guess who had the most growth? The 80-year-olds.
I was hoping it was 80.
So, we're all hoping that because there is a lot of hope. And it gets back to an old coffee table book that I used to have called Getting Old Is Not for Sissies. It was a book, you may have seen it, a lot of people have, and it's about 60-year-old ladies that got into powerlifting and things like that. Older people that swim the English Channel. The point is, exercise is incredibly beneficial. And not just for 20-something and 30-something. It's very beneficial as we get older. Now, you go back and you talk about this cognition thing and the fact that exercise is the one that is also linked to improvement of or to prevention of cognitive decline. Let's put that aside and let me finish the research for a second. HIIT was the one that caused the most improvement. The second most was resistance training. The long, slow distance was the third, and a distant third in terms of improving mitochondria. So if mitochondria are important to aging, and if they're important to like cognition, for example, then I think that piece of research is very, very telling for us. And you're not going to see it very often because how many people are going to agree to let a surgeon come in and take a piece of their muscle and actually analyze it after having done those those exercises. So that, and as well as several other things, are showing that we used to think long, slow distance aerobic was the thing. Now we're beginning to find that resistance training and interval training are very, very important. And there's hard science.
I read, I think, press reports about that study, and my interpretation was that long, slow distance was not aerobic. It was just kind of sauntering and walking.
Oh, so you're familiar with that?
I am, yeah.
It's more of an endurance.
Well, you could make a case for that. I mean, I've run marathons before, and I've done it with a lot of other folks. And what you do is you condition those muscles that you do use, but you don't really. You do it for 3 or 4 hours, but you don't really tax those muscles significantly on an acute phase.
Okay, so the key is acute.
Well,
yeah.
I think there's more than just aerobics.
Okay.
I think, to me, my point is, it's not that aerobics is no good. In fact, I think that all of these types are very helpful. I think that there's other mechanisms that they do for improving us, and one of them is sleep.
Okay.
Another one has to do with insulin and insulin resistance. When you exercise, we talked about the muscle cells and the insulin receptor.
Sure.
So there's a way to bypass bad insulin receptors, and that's exercise. In fact, if you do like a continuous glucose monitoring, have you ever done that?
I have not. But
Okay.
I just got the machine, I think.
Yes, you did.
Oh yeah, we just gave you one.
Yeah, I don't know how to put it on, but I've got one now.
So one of the interesting
There's a video on that.
Okay.
we got a lot of them on that, and some people get frustrated because they expect that little piece of machinery, a little button on your arm, to be as good as Quest. Actually, sometimes it is, but most of the time it's not. You have to sometimes figure it out and make sure you didn't get a bad button. But people begin to realize that, look, I took a carb vacation. My kids wanted to go out and get pizza and beer, and I had some of that. And I know my blood sugar's going up to like 160, 170, 180. Normally, it would stay there for a couple of hours as it slowly came down. All you have to do is take a walk. Just a very simple, slow walk, and it just takes the top right off of that.
We've taken our own data on Ford. So, but just for to clarify, we're talking about the Freestyle Libre, which is a sensor that goes into the arm. There's also the finger sticks, which everybody's aware of. But this gives a continuous readout through a reader. Mm-hmm. And so that is, we talk about in our practice, eating to the glucometer and exercising to the glucometer. So you're taking your own personalized data. And this is why we stay away from fad diets. We want to know what your body does. And I've had time and time again, people prove some interesting facts about what they're eating. They've compared fruits, for instance, and we know pineapple has more sugar. And they've had a pineapple smoothie versus a mixed berry smoothie, and took data through their finger stick or sensor and have shown they metabolized it just the same. Now, who would have guessed that? But that personalized data showed that. And so then we did take Ford's data after he ate a little too much at dinner when we went out. And do you mind me sharing?
No, go ahead.
He was like 148, and he said, let's go take a walk. And dramatically, after that, just a 20-minute, 1-mile walk, no hills, he dropped down into the 70s. And I'm like, this can't be right. But then he slipped back up closer to 100, and then he wanted to go take another walk. And so it's interesting with that personalized data, how you can begin to see your patterns and what foods cause your blood sugar to rise and how exercise impacts it.
I've had a couple of people that do this kind of work with us. Doug Thompson, for example, is a dentist that is very focused in this area, and he's always been frustrated that the Libre is not perfect. I talked with him again last night, and he was saying, yep, I'm really beginning to see the patterns here. And the patterns are what's important.
That's what's important. Yeah, because if you compare the finger stick to the Libre, they say the finger stick is the engine it's going to report higher sooner, and the Libre is the caboose. It comes a little bit later, the increase. But that's not really what's important. It is the pattern.
It's the pattern. Knowing the things like you just showed some surprise that just a simple, easy walk can just bring you right back down into more healthy blood sugar levels. I was surprised at that. Most people are. And that makes a comment again. I'm curious about your interpretation of that study that you mentioned that you read. You remember you mentioned that a minute ago. Why don't you give me?
Well, no. I mean, when I read the study, it was like I assumed that long and slow was, maybe breaststroke, or I could hike back to the Hornback. It's 3 miles, but if I don't really push it, you don't get your respiration up, you don't get your heart rate up. And so my thing has always been to get the heart rate up.
And I think that is very important. I think getting your heart rate up is critical to, it's hormesis. Have you heard the term? Are you familiar with it?
I'm not.
So hormesis is it's a longevity term. It's used a lot in longevity. It's talking about stressing the body, but it's eustress as opposed to distress, where you're wanting to stress something like your heart, like your vascular system, like the mitochondria in your muscles, to where they're having to push a little bit.
Sure. I mean, you got to make everything work. We all know that.
That's exactly
including
right.
everybody that works for you.
Exactly right.
Everybody works.
That's right. That's interesting, given your background, your perspective on that. You never would have been very successful like you've been had you not had some of that perspective.
Without a doubt. Yeah, gotta go to work every day. So, okay, we got that one. So, I don't know, is there something else we want to talk about?
On longevity?
Yeah.
I don't think so. We can, if we find something else.
Well, I want to do cancer, was my last one, yeah.
Okay, well, let's do cancer. The Louisville event was an incredible success. Many people didn't know that was our first attempt to coordinate the whole thing ourselves. And it was better than we had hoped. A lot of focus and people saying, you know what, I know that we can deal with this together as a group. There are other people that I'm meeting here at this event that are doing the same things I'm doing, and with success. I don't have to be a doctor to know all this stuff. We are going to go ahead and have another one on February 28th in the Hyatt Regency Grand Cypress in Orlando.